What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the MLB First Look podcast, presented, of course, by Run Pure Sports and Manscaped. I'm your host, as usual, DraftCheat, joined today by the great JT Hayes. What's going on, man?
The great JT Hayes. Wow, that is, my goodness, I'm humbled. I'm humbled. It's Friday morning. I'm in a great mood. It's cold here in Atlanta, D.C. Though we got a little cold snap. And I just talked to a buddy of mine who's down in Florida, and he's worried that the oranges down there are going to freeze and the iguanas are going to fall from the trees again. So, but we've got baseball back, and it's not cold on the West Coast where a lot of these games are going to be played tonight. It's a nice, tidy 6-game slate after a pretty wild slate yesterday. I want to hear what you thought about it. So much for the dead ball, right?
Yeah, so a lot to talk about, certainly. I mean, I'll start off by saying awesome day for the Run Pure Sports team. We remain on fire opening day. I had two, mom's basement plays of the day on the live show yesterday. They were Tyler Glasnow, who was awesome, especially in respect to all the pitchers that got blown up, and then Joey Gallo, who was one of the top scorers on the slate overall. So that was awesome. We saw our guy JSU. He had both those guys in his lineup. He won $200K on just $1,000 of entries. I had a solid day myself. I'm sure you did well. Content was great all across the board, and the green screens were rolling in the Discord for sure. There were a lot of them. It was one of those nights where, if you went 5x or 10x on your money, it wasn't enough to kind of get you all the accolades of other people, because there were a lot of mid 5-figure scores, if you will. So great stuff from everybody. Congrats to all the winners over at RPS. And, we're just going to keep it going. And the great thing about, every sport is like this, the NBA at least, but baseball keeps rolling, right? There's no days off in baseball. It's every day. Pretty much every day has at least a decent slate. Like you mentioned, a 6-gamer tonight. I assume this will be probably the smallest Friday slate all year. And most slates will be at least this big. So, man, I love baseball season and can't wait to keep it rolling.
Yeah, usually we're going to see the 15 gamers on Tuesdays and Fridays. Yep. You may see one every now and then on a Monday as well. But once the season gets rolling, the Monday and Thursday days off, travel days, right? You're going to see those Thursday 3, 4, 5 afternoon games. So 6 games on a Friday, don't get used to it. But it's definitely a good slate to dive into. As for me yesterday, I'll tell you, and maybe it's a blind spot, but Kevin Cash for the Rays, just really difficult to pin down the way he manages that pitching staff. And I worried about Glasnow on opening day. So I pivoted, and I made the wrong pivot. I pivoted to Luis Castillo. It's funny because I saw the wind blowing out, and I know the park is small. I know all of that, right? I have all of this information in my head. And I said, well, it's cold, and you've got Flaherty versus Castillo, and the run total for each team was like 3.8 or 3.9. And I said, no, I have faith. And sure enough, actually to my detriment, the Reds did let Castillo keep pitching, and he just kept giving up runs. So we're going to reboot today, and we're going to have a much better day. But, yeah, other than that, I had some great lineups. I had a stack of the Royals. I had a stack of the Pirates combined with Jorge Soler. The Pirates actually put up runs in that heat. I saw that Kyle Hendricks was throwing a very meaty 85 miles an hour. I can't imagine that if he continues.
That's just how he throws, though.
Yeah, he's. It's actually, believe it or not, he's been successful at 87, 88.
Oh yeah.
But 85, that's BP. BP, and the Pirates let him know it, even in a bad weather environment. So, but they were all haunted, if you will, by that minus 13 or minus 15 that Castillo put up. So, we're gonna reboot and do much better on that today.
We will, yeah. You asked about the deadened ball that was supposedly going to come into play for baseball. The initial plan was that they were going to use the old kind of juice ball in spring training and then switch to it once the regular season started, which for one seems just absolutely absurd that they would do that. But then I think they kind of backpedaled. So in spring training, I believe it was the highest home run to fly ball percentage ever in spring training in 2021. So clearly a pretty juiced ball, if you will. And it was just kind of unclear, among people trying to do projections, what kind of ball we were going to see to start 2021 regular season. Based on the results yesterday, I have to think, it's one game, and I haven't dug into all the data. I'll be doing that today and over the weekend, but I have to think we've got a juice ball on our hands again, which, hey, I'm all for it. More dingers. That works for me.
Yeah, and I will tell you, whatever balls they were using in Cincinnati and in Kansas City yesterday, I want those when I still play adult baseball. I want those when I'm at the plate.
Yeah.
I want them to burn those when I go to the mound because, my goodness. I mean, you talk about – the Texas Rangers putting up 10 runs.
Yeah.
I'm speechless, DC. I mean, you can tell I'm speechless. Yep. It was definitely hurtful for Luis Castillo and for Jack Flaherty. So we'll see. And then last night too, even in that
8-7 game with the Mariners and Giants.
Yeah. That's the one I was going to talk about because I played a couple of lineups on that night slate. And I said, you might be able to pitch those two guys against each other, but ultimately I just went for the strikeout upside with Gio, and it worked out fine. But I didn't see an 8-7 game in a cold night game in Seattle. It just tells you that I think baseball, as much as they may be giving lip service to the fact that, okay, we understand pitchers' concerns because guys like a guy who's pitching tonight, Trevor Bauer, been very outspoken about the fact that, the game is geared towards hitters, etc. And I think they realize that the offense is good for the game in terms of viewers, in terms of audience, in terms of interest. I'm just as much a baseball traditionalist as anyone when it comes to the actual game, having played it my entire life. And I appreciate the pitching, watching a pitcher, how you work batters, all of those things. But at the end of the day, if I'm sitting home and I'm watching a game at 10 o'clock at night, I'd rather see 8-7 than 2-1.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. And with that, we will jump into the games. Before we do, I have to say, it's spring. Baseball kind of signifies the start of spring. The flowers are blooming, grass is growing, and it's time to mow your lawn. Thanks to our sponsor, Manscaped, you can trim the hedges below the belt safely and efficiently. A proud sponsor of this podcast. I'm talking about the ball trimmers. Manscaped, the global leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming. Unless you're Titletown, have an exclusive offer for our audience. Use promo code HEATER25 to get 25% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. Join the other 2 million men who trust Manscaped. They are here to make sure your balls are smooth and smelling nice. After all, it's time for some spring clean.
DC, are you part of those 2 million? I need to hear that you're part of the 2 million strong.
Of course.
Manscaped
proud member of
Army.
the team. I was before I got the very generous Manscaped package in the mail, but especially now, much easier to do. A cleaner process, doesn't take as long, and it's not quite as dangerous as it was. So you got to love the product from Manscaped.
Yeah, I mean, men are safer today as a result of this product. It's a benefit to national security and public health. So I think it's definitely another reason to go to manscaped.com, take advantage of that delicious offer for Run Pure Sports. What else? You've got entertainment in Discord. You've got winners in the cores. You've got a tasty playbook every day. And we're making you healthier and safer. What more could you want?
We're fans of the workbench over at RPS, and Manscaped helps you get there. Let's get into the 6-game Friday slate. There is a makeup game starting here in a couple of hours. We're recording this on Friday morning, Boston and the Orioles, but we'll skip that one for this pod's purposes. First game of the night is Tampa Bay and Miami, a 7:10 Eastern time start here. We saw yesterday, wasn't surprising to me or certainly the other content providers at RPS, but this was a game to target for pitching. We saw Tyler Glasnow, who was my favorite player of the day, and Sandy Alcantara, who I liked as well. Didn't quite end up on him, but certainly Big T, JSU were on him, some others as well. A 1-0 pitchers duel. Certainly a good pitching park in in Miami. I think kind of what happened is it got a little bit overlooked with all the games in the cold, right? People wanted to target the freezing cold games and not the dome game. But important to remember, this is a good place to target pitchers as well. I think it could be a good place to target them once again. Ryan Yarbrough, Pablo Lopez, 7.5 total here. So I believe the lowest total on the slate. I like both these guys. I've long been a fan of Pablo Lopez. He's been a little up and down. He's dealt with some injuries, as often young pitchers do. He's got a fantastic changeup, and then in spring training developed a slider, which was kind of the pitch that he really needed. I think we're going to see him utilize that quite a bit this season. So I like Pablo Lopez to pitch well here, and I like the other side as well. Ryan Yarbrough, I'm a big high-stakes season-long player. He's my highest-owned pitcher in my season-long leagues. I think I got him on like 9 of 12 season-long leagues, partly because he was pretty cheap. But I do really believe in him. He's coming off a really good year. Again, you mentioned Kevin Cash on the Rays pitching staff. Like even yesterday, Glasnow was absolutely dominant. They pulled him after 76 pitches in a 0-0 game, and I don't think he had even been pinch hit for. So that was pretty bizarre, I thought. So you never know quite what the leash will be, but Yarbrough, Lopez, both these guys should be stretched out. They should at least, in theory, be able to handle, a 90-pitch workload, which is about all you can ask for this first week of the season. So I'm in on both these guys and probably fading hitters. Your thoughts here on the Rays and the Marlins?
Yeah, I think, and it's true with Glasnow. Glasnow, I thought, would be the one guy, because he was last year, would agree that Cash would let go just a little bit longer. Snell, if you remember last year, like Snell pitched 4 innings or 3 innings the first 3 or 4 times he pitched. It was a really weird thing. Glasnow got a little bit of a leash. Ryan Yarbrough has never gotten a leash from Kevin Cash. And so while this is a decent matchup, although I will say, if you look at this Marlins projected matchup, take the park away, and you look at Starling Marte, Jesus Aguilar, Adam Duvall, Brian Anderson, that's a tough matchup. Yarbrough, I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think Yarbrough, though, is a little bit splits independent or even maybe a little better against righties than most left-handers are. It's the price on Yarbrough on DraftKings. I don't think this is a guy on the slate that you're going to use on FanDuel, but the price on DraftKings 8.3, I greatly prefer Lopez at 7.0. There's still a ton of strikeouts in this Tampa Bay lineup. And the park, they're probably going to close the roof here again because it looks like it's, like I said, it's cold here in the Southeast today. 66 degrees in Florida, partly cloudy. But if they open it, there's a 20-mile-per-hour wind blowing in. So it's not a great environment for hitters. My preference would be Lopez. I think Yarbrough is okay, but I worry a little bit about the middle of that Miami lineup.
They do have some guys
be a little bit pesky as well.
Yeah, they got some guys that hit lefties pretty well, but like you mentioned, Yarbrough actually a little bit better against righties last year. And I think pretty much splits neutral over the course of his career. So, excuse me. So I'm not super worried about that. They did let Yarbrough go 5 full innings in his last spring tune-up start. So, again, you never trust her. Like, they'll pull guys quickly if they run into trouble, but that's the case for most pitchers. The pricing on Yarbrough, not perfect. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. But like we saw yesterday, pitchers are struggling right now. And so you don't need, I don't think necessarily, especially on a 6-game slate, like a dominant performance, right? Like if you get you 15 to 20 fantasy points, that's probably going to be enough to keep you in contention in tournaments. So I like both these guys. We saw the winners yesterday pair up both pitchers from this game, from the Rays and the Miami Marlins. You could do it again. Like you mentioned, Lopez 7K, Yarbrough 8.3 on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, Lopez 7.8, and I think Yarbrough is 6.8. So prices flip-flop there. I would certainly lean Yarbrough on FanDuel. I get it. Pablo, it's kind of hard not to have him projected for better point per dollar when he's cheaper on DraftKings. But I do like both these guys. I think you can play them both in the same lineup if you want to do that. And I'll be off the hitting in this game for sure. So I'm fully expecting, frankly, another pitcher's duel. I'm here for it, and these guys will be on my rosters. Next game, two pitchers that I probably personally won't be playing. Certainly not Antonio Senzatella taking on the Dodgers in Coors Field. We've got Trevor Bauer. A lot to talk about with him here, making his Dodgers debut, obviously also in Coors. Going to be, I think, roughly 75 degrees at game time. This is a 8:40 Eastern time start. Beautiful weather here in Colorado, really for the next couple of weeks. So there's going to be a lot of – we're going to want to be targeting Coors Field for sure over these next couple of weeks, especially before the rest of the country warms up, right? We saw some big scores in cold games, but in general, you still want to target the warmer weather, and especially in Coors Field. So this will be interesting. Senzatella is not a good pitcher anyway, and especially not in Coors. I'm going right back to the Dodgers lefties. Did you see the Cody Bellinger home run that turned out I was all in on Cody Bellinger, so that wasn't a lot of fun.
Yeah, we were on. So I was on the Hardwood, the NBA show with Big T and with Mangone, and I never. And this is one thing we talk about, right? With the people, our subs who are great, but some of them just, they're still kind of in the newer phase of their DFS career, and so they tilt a little bit, right? Something doesn't go their way out of the gate.
I mean, it's understandable to tilt this one.
Yeah, well, not so much this. So where I was going with that was,
okay,
I had 100% Luis Castillo.
Okay.
So I had 100% Luis Castillo, and I had about 95% Sandy Alcantara. So I was 1 for 2 there. But
two different performances.
What's that?
Was that a total a net positive points between those two?
Well,
what did Castillo end up with? Like, it had to be close to like minus 18 or something.
It was minus 16, minus 17, something like that. So I ended up getting like 8 points out of my pitchers, which is never ideal, right? Yeah. And I said on the Hardwood show, I said, if you'd have told me, if someone had called me or walked up to me and said, I will bet you today that Madison Bumgarner is going to have more points than Luis Castillo, I would have leveraged every dollar that I could get to make that bet, right? And I'd be under the bridge with some of our other subscribers. So, but so
you'd be in Mom's basement with me, man. That'd be
hey, there you go. So I'm not tilting, even though I've got a minus 16. Like I said, I had the Pirates who were unowned, who Brian Hayes, my cousin, as everybody knows, hits a home run in the first inning. I'm excited, right?
The stud.
I've got the Royals who score like 13 runs, right? I've got Royals in every lineup. I'm excited. And then I've got Luis Castillo, who's doing everything he can to drag my lineups down. And I have Bellinger and Seager in every lineup as well. So Bellinger and Seager were kind of almost every lineup. Shouldn't say every lineup. So I see it pop up on the DK Live that I'm watching while we're on the Hardwood show. And Tony's watching the game in the back. I'm like, all right, Bellinger, home run. And Tony starts talking about the fact that Turner passed him on the base path. And I know immediately that this is coming back.
Yep.
And I'm like, and I'm just sitting here, and all I could do was laugh, DC, because I'm like, sometimes this is the way the day goes, right? My pitcher, who's a stud ace in a matchup where he's projected to score the highest amount of points on the slate, right? He goes absolutely bonkers the other way. The guy I have in every lineup hits a home run, and it's not going to count. Yeah. And what do? You just laugh and you say on to tomorrow. So, yeah, that was pretty wild.
Certainly kind of expresses the importance of baseball bankroll management, especially in baseball. The swings are just so wild. Like, you can make the same process, two great lineups one day, one the next. One can chip a GPP and one – there'll be days, no doubt about the season, where we have two pitchers getting -10. It just happens sometimes. So you got to be able to deal with those swings so you can get back on the horse tomorrow, because the content and the projections and the plays will be good here. They're not always going to work out. That's just baseball for you. The Cody Bellinger home run that got taken back, prime example of that. In terms of this game, we are seeing a really high total here. I believe up around 12, which is, I think it was at 11 with Kershaw on the hill. I talked yesterday about not being at all afraid to target against Clayton Kershaw in Coors Field, partly because of his breaking balls just don't work super well in the thin air. That's going to be true for Trevor Bauer too. Now, Bauer does have a better fastball than Kershaw, but he's also reliant on his slider, his big curveball, and neither of those pitches are going to be super effective. So yeah, 12 total. Dodgers are big favorites, minus 245, but I'm on hitters in both of these games. Like I mentioned, I don't think Senzatella is very good. He's not very good. And especially the Dodgers lefties, once again, very, very high on all those guys. I know you're going to have to pay for them, but they're locked in. They just look fantastic. Bellinger and Seager in particular, but the rest of the guys too. Anybody, literally anybody in that lineup, going to be a good play. Will Smith going to be in there for sure. Austin Barnes' hand injury looked pretty nasty. And from the Rockies side, I mean, I'll take hitters from both sides of this game. Ball's going to be flying in Coors Field. Trevor Bauer, obviously a king strikeout artist, also gives up a lot of fly balls, has a home run problem. He gave up a ton of home runs in spring training. I kind of expect more of the same. So some of these lefties for Colorado are going to be in there. Guys like Sam Hilliard is a power speed guy that should be pretty cheap, I think. Trevor Story, I prefer him against lefties, but I'll use him here against Trevor Bauer, whose breaking ball won't be working as well. I think I'll be interested to see if people try to play Bauer. They might, right? Just such a big name coming off of a Cy Young season. I really have no interest. Yes, he's capable of performing well. I would take I would take both Yarbrough and Pablo Lopez straight up in fantasy points projected against Trevor Bauer. So he's the most expensive pitcher on the slate. I'm not going there. I'll throw in one more point. I know I'm going on a little bit of a rant here. The sticky substance stuff. So Trevor Bauer's spin rate spiked way up in 2020. He had basically called out other players for using this sticky substance. He used it. That kind of propelled him to his monster season. Now MLB is saying they're going to try to crack down on pitchers using this. We don't know if that's going to be true or if he's going to be hesitant to use it. But if he's not using it, his effectiveness will go down. The spin rate on his pitches will drop. Garrett Cole was the other pitcher that's kind of well known to be using this stuff. And he looked fantastic yesterday. A ton of strikeouts. So I guess my suspicion is the pitchers are just kind of going to say fuck it and use it anyway. And if they get caught, they get caught because there's not clear punishments. But just something to think about and just makes me that much more worried about Trevor Bauer here.
Yeah, I think so. It's obviously early. I'm seeing projections of 30% ownership, which is a little bit difficult to believe because he's 10-5 in Coors. That's a price that almost never gets paid off. He's 10-5 on DraftKings, I should say. Almost never gets paid off in that park. And, I think Dave Roberts is another guy too, especially early in the season, right? I wouldn't be surprised if Trevor Bauer, I know he went, I think 5 1/3 his last spring training start. That's probably maybe 6 innings the ceiling here, I think. And I talked about this yesterday. One of the reasons why, in addition to Coors, in addition to the fact that they're just super talented, that I liked the Dodgers here is the Rockies bullpen gave up 32 home runs in spring training, right? Now they're in Coors. That's not a good bullpen. Senzatella is a much easier matchup for these guys than German Marquez.
Yep.
I think you'll see Senzatella out of the game pretty early, and I think you can. Tapia at 3-2 leading off in Coors. He should probably, him and McMahon, should make a lot of your lineups tonight at 3-6. I'm looking at DraftKings pricing. Hilliard 2-3 on DraftKings. Charlie Blackmon is a very good play today in the cleanup spot there. I'm going to be playing a lot of these guys. The pitchers aren't going to make any of my teams tonight. If Bauer beats me at that price, the way that he's looked, I'll say this. Look, Bauer is a great talent. He's made this decision that he wants to be a personality. It almost never works out for athletes during their career. It always either dilutes a little bit of their attention span or attracts people on the other side that are more determined to beat those guys, because the players don't look at him as an advocate for the players. They look at him as a big mouth and a guy that's just really interested in attention for himself. Sure. So I think teams are going to be motivated to play against him, and in particular against the world champions. We saw that yesterday. 8-5 game yesterday. I think it's going to be higher scoring tonight.
I agree with that. I'll take the over on 12 here. Last thing with the Dodgers, I mean, the Rockies beat them yesterday, but they pretty much ran through all the best arms in their best in quotation marks, right? There's not a lot of good arms, but they used them all. And they'll be probably hesitant early in the season to use those. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be the other guys in the Rockies bullpen that are going to have to pitch, I don't know, 6-7 innings here, probably with 5 or 6 innings with Senzatella. I can't imagine he makes it too long into this one. So I really think the Dodgers, I might bet the alternate run line of like 10 plus runs for the Dodgers in this one. I think they're going to absolutely tee off, especially coming off a loss. They're going to have a good matchup throughout the game. That lineup is deep. It has no weaknesses. So I love the Dodgers bats, but I'm taking some Rockies too.
Yeah, and I think with the pricing on pitching, if you either, like you were talking about, if you went just Yarbrough Lopez, you could easily get a 4-4, 5-3 here with these prices on the Rockies side. It's pretty easy to do that. You could even drop down if you want. There's a couple of pitchers. Well, there's one pitcher later in particular. You could pair him with one of those guys, and you could use a one-off and get 7 guys out of this game. So I think that's the way to go. I'm not, there's a couple of other offensive spots that we'll talk about, but obviously this is going to be, I think, the highest scoring game of the night.
Absolutely. Let's go to the next one, Chicago White Sox and the Los Angeles Angels. This one, of course, in L.A. We've got an 8.5 total here. Dallas Keuchel on the mound against Andrew Heaney, 2 lefties who have different styles for sure. Game pretty much a toss-up. Angels slight favorites. Keuchel, he won a Cy Young, 2015, 2016, a long time ago with the Astros. It's kind of just been like a middling innings-eating type pitcher since then. Very, very low strikeout rate, but also a super high ground ball rate. He's a guy that throws strikes, go deep into games, keeps the ball on the ground, just kind of survives that way. He's one of those pitchers where, I don't know, he's like the Utah Jazz in the NBA if they're fully healthy. I don't really want any Jazz players in most of those situations, but I also don't want to target against them. Keuchel is sort of the pitching version of that, where I will almost never recommend Dallas Keuchel because his upside's so low with how few strikeouts he can get. The Angels make pretty good contact in general throughout their lineup. So I'm not in on Keuchel or the Angels outside of perhaps Mike Trout, who is the best low ball hitter in all of baseball. If he's just kind of got that golf type swing. Like the only place you can really beat Mike Trout is kind of up and in on his hands. And Keuchel, that's not where he throws pitches pretty much ever. So Trout would be the one guy I'd kind of look at from the Angels most likely. And then on the White Sox side, Andrew Heaney, he does have strikeout upside for sure. I think he's at least in play on this slate. But he gives up a ton of home runs, especially to right-handed power. And, going back to kind of what we think is a pretty juiced-up baseball, that's going to hurt him, right? Guys that give up a lot of fly balls, those are going to be flying over the fence more often than they're caught at the warning track. So I kind of like some of this right-handed power from Chicago. Luis Robert, Jose Abreu, right? Tim Anderson's got a little bit of pop. Andrew Vaughn, if he's in the lineup, their rookie, he's going to be a stud. So, yeah, I'm looking more at the White Sox power hitters in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on Dallas Keuchel. I think it's a mistake to pay at least the DraftKings almost $9K for a ground ball pitcher. It's just –
you're like praying for like 15 fantasy points as kind of like a ceiling, basically.
Yeah, there are slates where maybe I would play that.
A smaller slate with like a Coors game, yeah, sure.
Exactly. But it's not this slate. If he was 6K, maybe, because then you fit in your Coors bats. But he's not. He's almost 9K. I agree with you. One of the things, the prices that jumped out to me, Andrew Vaughn at 2K, yeah, he projects to be hitting the 8-hole, but the Angels are a team that has a really bad bullpen. We saw that last night a little bit. But overall on this game, I'm not particularly interested in the pitching here. I think, Heaney is a good pitcher, and he can certainly, there's strikeout upside, as you mentioned, but this White Sox team is a team that's designed to beat left-handed pitching, and I think they can even beat the best left-handed pitching, and Heaney's a rung below that. One guy that I would look at in addition to Trout on the Angels side is Max Stassi, a little bit underrated. He hit a home run last night.
Yeah.
He's got good home run power, especially against lefties. And I would be willing to take a shot with him at that price on 3-1 if I'm not playing one of the catchers in the Coors game.
Yeah, I like that Stassi call. Of course, we're not going to give away all our plays on this free podcast. To get that, you'll need to become a member. Yeah, Max Stassi's all right. We can give away that one, but just there'll be more plays certainly over on the premium content at Run Pure. So that's Chicago and LA. We'll go to Houston and Oakland next. We typically see lower totals out in Oakland, right? A big ballpark. Ball doesn't travel particularly well there, all that foul territory. But an 8.5 total in this one. Athletics favorites, -137. They've got Jesus Luzardo on the hill, very talented lefty, pitched some last year. But, one of the top, for sure, 10 pitching prospects in baseball. I'm kind of lukewarm on him right now. I do think he'll develop into being great, but I don't think he's quite there yet. And then Christian Javier, pitching for the Astros, a very unique pitcher. He throws just a ton of high fastballs. If you look at his launch angle, average launch angle given up, which, basically if you hit a ball into the ground, it's a negative launch angle. If you hit a pop-up, it's like a 50-degree launch angle, and then home runs are generally between 20 and 30 degrees. He's got the highest launch angle, I think, of any starting pitcher in baseball, which could work in the Coliseum, right? Because all that foul ground, you can get some foul pop-ups, and you got to really get a hold of it to get it out of Oakland. So I don't love him as a pitcher in general. I do think he's a little bit interesting here, at least on a slate where, there's just not that many great pitchers to choose from. He's 6.5K on DraftKings. I'm intrigued by that. I think he does have a path to success here. 7K on FanDuel. I can't imagine using him over Ryan Yarbrough. So probably not so much on my radar there. And then, Luzardo, I'll be on the other side of this one too. I like the Astros bats. They look good to me. I think they're going to have a strong season. Altuve, Bregman, Correa, another deep lineup. And then Yordan Alvarez, my main man, just missed a couple of free-run home runs yesterday. Had a good day anyway, but he's back, and he's one of my favorite players. My favorite to lead MLB in home runs. He can hit lefties. I think he's going to be somewhat of a sneaky play on this slate just because it's lefty on lefty against Luzardo. So I'm kind of liking this game from offense from the Houston side, and then maybe a little bit of Javier interest.
Yeah, the one thing on Javier, he threw 3 innings this spring, so I don't expect – if he was 4K, I would definitely have interest, but I'm probably not going to go there tonight just because I wonder, what's his
I think he threw like 80 pitches in a simulated B game, so I think he should. But I mean, you're still hoping for 4 or 5 innings max out of him, no question.
Yeah. So 6.5, not a bad price, but for 500 more, you could get up to Lopez. So I think there's other options.
Yep.
I tend to play the A's a lot more than anybody else. I just seem to love the talent on that team. I was watching this game yesterday. It was a little frustrating watching Greinke kind of force them to beat balls into the ground for the most part.
Zach Greinke being Zach Greinke.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I just think I like the offensive spots better. If I'm playing multiple lineups, I will maybe mix in a stack of the A's, but it's not a top target for me.
Yeah. What you want against Javier is hitters that can hit high fastballs. I know the answer to that question, and we'll be giving it away, but I won't give it away here. There are certain A's that you want to target against Christian Javier who profile much better. It's not just as simple as looking at lefty-righty splits. We'll have all that stuff that you need over at RPS. Next game, we'll talk about 2 more to go, Arizona and San Diego. We saw Mad Bum get roughed up a little bit yesterday, kind of as predicted, frankly, by a very strong Padres offense. They'll send Merrill Kelly out there, the D-backs will. He's okay, nothing special. I do think right-handers in general will have more success against the Padres, who are pretty right-handed heavy. But in general, they're just not a team I'm going to pick on with pitchers very often, and that'll be the case again tonight. And then the Padres have the debut of Blake Snell, acquired in the offseason, obviously from the Rays. He's looked pretty good this spring. We'll see if the kid gloves are off for Blake Snell with the Padres. Last year, you mentioned this earlier, JT, like Snell would go like 3, 4, 5 innings. I think I saw a stat. I don't quote me on this, but he hasn't pitched 6 innings in like a year and a half or something crazy like that, which is just bizarre for a former recent Cy Young winner who, I mean, he's still in his prime, right? He's not old by any means whatsoever. I don't know. He's probably 26, 27, something like that. So we'll see. I kind of expect the Padres to give him a little bit more leash. Whether or not that'll work out super well remains to be seen, because Snell, the reason the Rays did that, the Rays are one of the smartest organizations in baseball. Snell's numbers, the third time through the order, fall off in a big way. He struggles when hitters have seen him a couple times already. So I don't know. Maybe the Padres can figure a way to turn that around. Snell, I imagine, will be a very popular play tonight. I have him projected for the highest ownership of any pitcher on the slate. I like him some, but I don't think he's some huge lock. So talk to me about Snell and anything else in this Padres D-backs game.
Yeah, so he threw 5 innings with 6 strikeouts in his last spring training start. He wrote this very passive-aggressive article in The Athletic, or it may have been the Players Tribune, and I read it because the first paragraph made me think that he was going to sort of go off on the Rays organization, and he didn't exactly do that, but like I said, it was very passive-aggressive, talking about that World Series start where he kind of imploded in, I believe it was the 5th inning, and he basically said, look, I run out, I'm excited, nobody's touched me, and I see 2 guys warming up. And he's like, it's my fault, I can understand what they were doing, sure. But basically said, the fact that he knew that he was coming out of these games played a role, he believes, in why he struggled towards the 5th and 6th inning. Look, all around baseball, the analytics suggest that, the third time around is when, pitchers, batters have seen the pitcher. There's a way to do that, and the better pitchers, the Jacob deGroms for years, the Max Scherzers, have figured this out. You don't throw all your pitches to these guys the first 2 at-bats, right? You mix it up, you throw different spots, elevate, whatever. That's the science of pitching. That's the a little bit more in-depth of the game.
You need a big fastball to get away with that, but, I mean, Snell has it, right? He has the stuff to – it seems to me like you mentioned, most pitchers, they're going to suffer greatly the third time through the order because they need all their stuff to get through the first 2 times anyway. So you talk about, the deGroms and the Garrett Coles. Well, of course, when you can throw 100 miles per hour, you can rely on your fastball a little bit more. But yeah, Snell would seem like a guy that could, you can pump it up there in the mid to high 90s. So yeah, didn't mean to cut you off, but it'll be interesting to see Blake Snell in the Padres uniform this year.
Yeah, so 9-7, again, 9-7 probably a little bit too much.
Are you? It sounds like you're kind of leaning toward me, where it's like, yeah, Snell could be good, but like I want to prioritize those Coors Field bats on this slate, the big bats. Like, to me, that's how you get to the top of tournament leaderboards. I know most people start with pitching, and I get it. You don't have to. Like the range of outcomes from these. I don't think any pitcher tonight is going above 25 fantasy points. I think a lot of these guys are going to end up between 10 and 20. Hitters can go from 0 to like 40. You know what I mean? It's like there's just a bigger range in outcome in hitting. I think people, in my opinion, yes, pitching very important. It can be a little bit overstated, especially in this day and age where pitchers don't get to go as deep into games. And we're just not going to see as many monster performances in general. And certainly on this slate, I don't really see any pitchers that I think are going to be huge performers tonight.
Yeah, so on this slate, you're exactly right. None of these pitchers is going to get 35 points to where you're dead without him, right? So, but you mentioned the most important thing for a tournament player like myself. He is projected to be 40% owned right now, and that's at, 11 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast.
And that's with Bauer getting 30%, which we kind of doubt. So
that's right. So as soon as people start to actually try and make lineups, right? And a lot of people, I guess there are people who will do that in the mid-afternoon. I usually do it late afternoon. Once they start to make lineups with Trevor Bauer and the rational side of their brain realizes that they don't like those lineups and the projections for Bauer are probably off, right? Then they're going to come down, and I think you're going to see Snell go from 40 to maybe 55, maybe even higher than that because of some of the other pitchers that are just not good options on the slate, like a Keuchel. Keuchel's not going to become popular at 8-7, and he shouldn't be. And I'm not suggesting that, but I like his chances against when you turn around this Arizona lineup and make guys like Cabrera's okay from the right side, but Escobar I think much better from the left side. Ketel Marte I believe is probably a little bit better from the left side. You got Peralta probably in it. So it's just not as strong a lineup for a guy like Blake Snell. So I think he's okay, but there's a chance you may be able to get the same amount of production from one of these other lower price pitchers. So it's something to think about.
Yeah. I don't mind rostering some of the – I'm not going crazy with Arizona stack, but Ketel Marte, he was a guy that certainly helped a lot of RPS guys have big days, including myself. He's still 3.3K. He's a great hitter. He looked awesome in spring. I think you could throw out 2020 with him. He had some quotes where he was struggling with like the shortness of the season. He got off to a slow start and he was pressing to try to get his stats up. I think you'll see more of basically the superstar level Ketel Marte that we saw in 2019. So I like him a lot. He's basically splits neutral. He can hit lefties just fine. Still very cheap. So yeah, don't go crazy with Arizona, but I do like to pick off one or two hitters when I'm fading a super expensive pitcher, right? Because if that guy fails, usually it's because someone did some damage on the other side. Ketel Marte, Christian Walker. You could punt with Carson Kelly at catcher, I think, against Snell if you wanted to. So some different options there. What about the San Diego side? I assume you're not going to Merrill Kelly here, but which hitters are you looking at?
No, I'm definitely – well, I mean, I don't know, 6-7. It's definitely risky. I probably won't do it. The other thing to mention on Arizona is we figure Snell is, tops 6 innings. San Diego's bullpen did not look good yesterday. It was not good in spring training. On the San Diego side, these guys are all really priced up for a stadium that I think tonight is going to play a little smaller at night than it did yesterday, projected to be 61 degrees at game time. I mean, obviously Tatis and Machado, but you're paying 6K and 5.7. If I'm going to pay 6K and 5.7, although I feel this way, I'm sure the field will feel this way too, right? Would rather play the guys in cores. So it's definitely a contrarian spot here. Arizona, pitching, bullpen doesn't really particularly scare me. It's just not a priority for me.
I'm with you. I don't see a ton here. I just way prefer those Coors Field bats, frankly, on both sides, Rockies and Dodgers, than going to some of these expensive Padres bats. Just looking through for any kind of cheaper plays. Only guy that I really see that I would be interested in, Jake Cronenworth, pretty good hitter. He's 3.4K on DraftKings, so nice discount there. Not a super exciting play, but did have a pretty solid game yesterday. So if you want to pick out, kind of one San Diego bat, he would probably be the guy with the savings for me. All right, JT, let's get to the last game of the evening, San Francisco and Seattle. We mentioned we saw kind of a unexpected, shootout, if you will, between these two teams last night, 8-7 in extra innings, 8.5 total again. So relatively modest, kind of in line with these other games that we've been talking about for the most part. Mariners slight favorites, -122. We have Yusei Kikuchi on the mound for the Mariners and Johnny Cueto, whatever he's got left, probably not all that much, frankly, on the mound for the Giants. Seattle does typically play as a pitcher's park, although last night obviously was a little bit different. Kikuchi, I haven't been super high on him kind of in the lead up to the season. Not a guy I ended up with, on my season-long teams, but a lot of smart people who I respect have. Throwing harder, looks like he was fairly unlucky last year. So Kikuchi, an interesting guy here. I do think he is one that, at least in theory, could give you 6+ innings. Again, it's hard to project that for anyone but the best aces these days, but I think he could. He's 6K on DraftKings. The Giants lineup is a little bit underrated, but 6K on DraftKings for Kikuchi, I have to imagine he's going to be a fairly popular play this evening.
Yeah, I'm looking now, and 20%, 21%,
Okay.
maybe that goes up.
I'm interested at that ownership percentage for sure.
Yeah, so 6K, I don't know. See, here's the thing, and we talked about this guy quite a bit last year because he had a couple of performances where we were on him, but we were on him at a little cheaper than this, 5-1. He's throwing harder, but the range of outcomes here is Luis Castillo's performance yesterday to maybe 30 points. So it's definitely not. You're not playing this guy in cash. The other thing, you talked about it, this Giants lineup isn't terrible. I mean, it's not by any means.
It's pesky.
Yeah, it's not by any means the Dodgers, but Austin Slater, who hit a home run last night. Evan Longoria hit a home run last night, I believe. Donovan Solano is a decent player. Yastrzemski, I love. I love his talent against lefties. I love his talent against righties. I don't care. And Wilmer Flores, who does hit lefties pretty well, he's in this lineup. Posey hit a home run last night, so Posey appears. He didn't play at all last year. So there's enough here to make me say, all right, it's a risk. I'll take a look and see what the props are that come out, see what his K prop is, see what Vegas thinks of him, because he's a guy I can't get a read on. And like I said, the range of outcomes is so starkly different from just a really terrible performance and only a handful of really good ones. So I don't have any interest in Cueto as of right now. And I don't think I will have any later on either.
Yeah, Kikuchi, he did get stretched out, looks like, to 91 pitches. It was a simulated game. But the important thing right there is the pitch count, right? So if you get through 91 in a simulated game, in theory, you could be pushing up toward the century mark in a real game at 6K. I do think there's some upside. Again, I don't think the Giants are a great team to target, but there's just not great of pitchers on the mound today. There's not that many good options. Like I said, I think 15 fantasy points each from your two pitchers, if you're not paying all the way up, would be a pretty damn good outcome. Would certainly keep you in the running for GPP victory. So Kikuchi at 6K, I think, makes a lot of sense, especially if that 20% ownership holds. That feels low to me. I would guess over, but we'll see. You never know which direction people are going to go. Any Seattle hitters against Cueto?
I mean, it's definitely a spot you could take advantage of. Obviously,
you could stack this one up if you wanted to, I think.
Yeah, and we saw last night, and what we'll see again. It was a running theme towards the end of last season when San Francisco traded pretty much their entire bullpen. Every serviceable arm in their bullpen moved on the trade market last year. Mitch Haniger leading off at 3-1, if that's where he lands. Yep. That's a nice price for him, a guy who's back and appears to be healthy now. Seager 4-7 DraftKings pricing. I like Tom Murphy better against left-handed pitching
for sure.
JP Crawford, I wish he was sitting second instead of Ty France, but I would stick kind of the top lineup with some of these pricing. Obviously, You want a punt catcher all the way down if you feel a need. I think you could do worse than Tom Murphy.
For sure. And with that'll wrap up this 6-game MLB slate. We'll have, of course, everything you need over at runpeersports.com. Should be another good day for the squad. This pod will return on Monday morning, Monday through Friday. We'll have this one out, but I'll be in Discord and doing all the premium content and everything you need, of course, with the team on the weekend. So sign up over at RPS. I think you will not regret your decision. We'll stay in the green, and we'll keep cashing. He's JT. I'm DraftCheat, and we'll check you next time.